Hello.
Diane, is it
Yeah.
you?
Can you hear me?
I
Yeah.
can hear you. We don't
Oh,
see
good.
you, but we can hear you.
You can't see me?
We cannot see you. I see your name.
Oh, so video. I have to click on something.
Yeah.
Now can you
There
see
she
me?
is. Yay.
We do.
Yes, beautiful. Perfect.
Mike, what are you doing here? You never come in when I'm doing a Zoom. Mike, aren't you supposed to disappear? He
Maybe he
always
wants to learn.
disappears when I have a Zoom. He totally disappears because I tell him
Oh,
he
that's
can't make
funny.
noise, he can't slam doors, he can't talk
Yeah.
on the
Oh,
phone,
I
he
just
can't
did that
listen
to
to
my
jazz.
I just sent my husband up the stairs. Yeah, he was being too loud. So, but listen, I'm so glad you could come. And I want to introduce you to Kathy Reynolds, Kathy Reynolds. She's with the Air Force, the Society of Air Force Nurses. And then I have Ed Yeichel, who is the president of the Army Nurse Corps Association.
Hi, Ed.
Good to see
So
you
we're
again,
really happy
Diane.
that you could be with us. And then I have also here is Mary Mahoney. She's our executive director.
Hi, Mary. How
And
are
Dot
you?
O'Veary, you might remember because Dot did the interview with you back in
Yes,
January. So that it was the two
yes.
of us. So we just thought that we would take some time and bring the group together because I know you are all about the collaboration. And it occurred to me that if we could pull all these brains together and have some conversation and sharing, it would be a really wonderful, wonderful, rich experience. So I hope that's okay with
I'm
you.
looking forward to it. Just don't put me in the hot seat, right? Of
No, no, we won't put you in the hot seat too much.
course, I'm used to
Um,
that. I've been in that before.
you are. But I
I
did
know
want to
how to
ask.
get out of it real fast.
I'm not sure about that. Um, but I did want to ask you, there were some more people that wanted to join in on the conversation. Would it be okay if we added a couple of more folks
Oh, of course, this is up to you.
in?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sure. So Mary, we have a couple of people that were waiting to see if it'd be okay, if you could
Okay.
let them in.
Yep.
So Diane, these are just a few people who really wanted to join us tonight. And I had you join us under the guise of having a conversation with our Army Nurse Corps Association president, our Society of Air Force Nurses president, and me. But the reality is, the three organizations, after our conversation back in January, I was so inspired by that conversation that I knew we had to do something. And I reached out to Bonnie Barnes and I said, Bonnie, we got to do something. This woman is amazing. And then I reached out to my colleagues, Ed and Kathy, and said, we got to do something. So this is a collaboration from all of us to you. We want to let you know that you have been nominated and awarded the Daisy Lifetime Achievement Award. And these are folks who are coming together to witness this moment with you. So we're so very, very happy to be able to come together, even though it's virtual, but to come together and be able to share this moment. And so with that, I wanted to do some proper introductions and have the opportunity for some folks to say hello to you. So with that, I'm going to ask each of my colleagues from the other services to say a few words. And starting it off will be Colonel Kathy Reynolds from the Society of Air Force Nurses. She has some greetings for you.
Hi, Diane and everyone. It's indeed a privilege for me to be here tonight to represent the Society of Air Force Nurses, our president, Terry Page, and all Air Force nurses and all Air Force women, and recognizing one who has left us all a lasting legacy of our service. As you know, Air Force women in various career fields served our country during the Vietnam War. You'll hear later about our air medical evacuation nurses, who played a critical role in not only moving service members within country, but back for definitive health care in facilities across the globe. But the mission would have suffered were it not for the many women and nurses who were in the war zone throughout Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, and stateside, covering the holes in Air Force healthcare. I'm so very proud to have served my country during the Vietnam War. and join all Air Force women in saying thanks to Diane for her dedication and tenacity to create this powerful beacon that inspires hope, healing, and gratitude to all women who served. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you,
I'd now like to introduce you to Ed Yackel, President of the Army Nurse Corps Association.
Thank you, Kathy. Diane, fellow Army Nurse Corps officer, on behalf of the members of the Army Nurse Corps Association, I want to congratulate you on this lifetime achievement. Your dedication to all military nurses and fighting to honor them with a statue on the National Mall is nothing short of extraordinary. Army Nurse Corps Association was privileged to co-sponsor your nomination on behalf of all Army nurses as we prepare to celebrate 125 years of Army nursing next year and the 50th anniversary of the Army Nurse Corps Association. Thank you for being a member. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Now, I'm going to turn over my portion to Colonel Cindy Sweeney from the Navy Nurse Corps Association. Cindy?
That would be Captain Sweeney.
Oh, Captain, I'm sorry. Yeah, I forget those ranks. I forget.
I know,
There you
it's
go,
too
Captain.
easy. It's too
Yeah.
easy. So you all have said some beautiful, beautiful words, and I just wanted to send some words back to Diane that she may recognize. While building the Vietnam Women's Memorial, veteran women sliced through decades of silence and transformed images and conversations about Vietnam, affirming that women too share the crucible of war. Those are Diane's words, the last line in her book, Healing Wounds. So I wanted to send those right back to you because they mean so much. Those are powerful, powerful words. So on behalf of the Navy Nurse Corps Association, we are very, very grateful, Diane, for your vision and for the subsequent reality of the Vietnam Women's Memorial, which has sparked conversations and the value of honoring our legacy. In May of this year, I attended the Memorial Days program at the Wall. The memorial is to those who lost their lives in Vietnam, as we all know. I brought with me my daughter and my 7-year-old granddaughter, Cressa. After the program at the Wall, we walked to the Vietnam Women's Memorial. I explained the symbolism and the meaning to her as best I could for a 7-year-old. After the weekend, though, my daughter dropped me a note about that experience. And here's an excerpt from her note. Quote, "Creating a monument, something physical, it makes history more accessible. Cressa may not be old enough to fully understand the Vietnam War, but she's able to experience it and learn at her own pace. As she gets older, she will have this memory, and with each visit, she will understand more about the deeper meaning." Unquote. So Diane, on behalf of the Navy Nurse Corps Association and our future members, who may be 7 years old and such, I want to thank you for bringing the conversation and this recognition forward on behalf of all women. It has been an honor to collaborate with my partners here in recognizing you and the work that you have done with the Daisy Lifetime Achievement Award.
Oh, thank you. And I know all about that now. Having met Bonnie, this extraordinary woman, and how we were actually kind of working in tandem. I was doing my thing, trying to recognize and honor and remember military women for the first time in the history of the United States on the National Mall with a figurative portrayal of women, a tangible portrayal. And then here she is off trying to recognize and accomplishing her goal as well in highlighting the service of civilian nurses. And you must give the Daisy Award to military nurses too, or am I the first one?
No. We've got military nurses.
Bonnie, you're there.
She's here. And in
Bonnie,
fact,
you're this happy
couldn't
old
do any-
parents from Bonnie.
I couldn't done much more of an introduction than what you have because Bonnie is going to speak now.
Okay.
And Bonnie Bonnie and Mark, and we have Deb from the Daisy Foundation. But very, very good dear friends from my past and part of our future. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie to talk a little bit about the Daisy Foundation and this award.
Well, thank you, Cindy. And I just feel like I'm in the presence of history being made here, having you all together at one time to honor this extraordinary nurse, extraordinary woman, Diane. It has been a gift to meet you this last year, Diane, and to develop the friendship that we have built. And I'm just so proud of the fact that today, now that you have had a chance to experience nominating a team of nurses and giving them the Daisy Award, you are going to get to feel what it feels like to be presented and receive a Daisy Award. So as Cindy said, with me is my husband, Mark, and you've certainly heard his voice on some of our phone calls, and Daisy's Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Deb Zimmerman. And just before we explain a little more about Daisy, I'd love for Deb to introduce herself.
Diane, it is so good to see you again. When we met, I felt like I was meeting the Taylor Swift of nursing. Your life and your leadership embody the very essence of courage, of compassion, and of advocacy. You as a nurse, a veteran, and a tireless champion of nurses have shown the world the strength of our profession and the humanity that lies at its core. You advocated for those who put themselves in harm's way to care for others. Your vision and your advocacy led to the creation of the Vietnam Women's Memorial. And because of you, the sacrifice and service of women will never again be invisible. You've inspired generations of nurses to use their voice and to advocate for what is just. Tonight, we celebrate your extraordinary achievements, your compassion, your courage, and your advocacy. Thank you for your unshakable belief in the power of nurses and the power of women around the world. Oh, what a difference you have made. You are so deserving of this recognition.
Thank you, Deb. So beautifully said. So for all of you who may be a little less familiar with the DAISY experience than some of you are, I know, and certainly than Diane is, DAISY is an acronym for Diseases Attacking the Immune System. Mark and I started the foundation 25 years ago when his son died of the autoimmune disease ITP, and we were so touched by the care his nurses provided to him and to us throughout the 8 weeks he was in the hospital. We just felt as a family compelled to say thank you to nurses. So we created this concept to give patients and families and coworkers a way to share their stories of the extraordinary work that nurses do every day, and to enable healthcare organizations to celebrate that work and to shine a light on what nurses really do and the difference they make in their relationships with patients and families. When we started this, we really thought if we could say thank you to nurses in, 5 hospitals around the United States, we'd feel better about losing Patrick. But today, there are over 7,580 healthcare facilities and nursing schools in 44 countries, and I don't know how many military bases, and almost all of the VA hospitals that are committed to honoring nurses month in and month out with this award. So we could not be more proud to know that, Diane, you are now officially a DAISY nurse on top of all of your other nursehoods. And it's just an absolute joy to see so many people come together to celebrate you tonight. So Cindy, I believe you are back on next so that you can actually read the nomination that you all have crafted for Diane, right?
Yes, and so you'll hear 3 voices. So the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army. So let me begin. Diane, it is with deep admiration and united voices from across the military nursing community, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, that we nominate Diane Carlson Evans, Army Nurse Corps, for the DAISY Foundation's Lifetime Achievement Award. Diane embodies the spirit of this prestigious award through her relentless pursuit to recognize, elevate, and preserve the legacy of women who served during the Vietnam War, particularly military nurses whose service had been unrecognized for too long. In 1993, because of Diane Carlson Evans' tenacious vision and leadership, the Vietnam Women's Memorial was established on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This historic memorial is dedicated to the 265,000 women, military and civilian, who served during the Vietnam War. approximately 10,000 of whom were stationed in Vietnam. It is the first and only national monument dedicated to military women on the National Mall. Spanning over a decade, Diane's passion, intense advocacy, and her unwavering ability to navigate a sea of political, social, and bureaucratic obstacles ensured that the service of women during the Vietnam War would no longer be invisible. Her efforts reflect both personal dedication and a profound commitment to the collective good. As an Army nurse who served in Vietnam, Diane knew firsthand the courage, skill, and compassion of the women who served beside her. But she also understood that these contributions were largely overlooked in the historic record and public memory. Diane made it her mission to correct that injustice, not just for her own generation, but for all women who will serve. Captain Susan Stewart Miller, USN retired, recalls how Diane's work galvanized the Guamis. These are Navy nurses who served on Guam, caring for wounded sailors and Marines evacuated from Vietnam. And I quote Susan, "Diane represents all the professionalism and compassion that we gave our patients daily." These nurses would travel to DC, Washington, D.C. to witness the 1993 memorial dedication and have returned every 5 years since, marking their own healing and recognition through Diane's vision. In addition, Rear Admiral Mary Ann Ibach, USN retired, who served on board one of the hospital ships stationed off of Vietnam, spoke at the groundbreaking ceremony in July of 1993. She reflected, and I quote, "Thousands of men are alive today because of the battlefield care given to them by women who served. Without Diane's leadership, the thousands of women who served during that time may never have been recognized. All of us owe her a debt of gratitude."
The Air Force community echoes this gratitude. Hundreds of Air Force nurses form the lifeline of aeromedical evaluation missions in Southeast Asia, including poignant operations like Homecoming and the Baby Lift. The Vietnam Women's Memorial, as stated by the Society of Air Force Nurses, is a powerful beacon that inspires healing and hope for military nurses then and now. Thanks to Diane, their stories endure.
Mary Fontenot, active duty Army Nurse Corps, reflected that the Women's Memorial stands as a powerful testament to the strength, sacrifice, and skill of women who have served, echoing the heartbeat of every Nurse Corps officer who brought comfort in chaos and in duty. It has been both a sanctuary and a tribute where silenced voices are honored with the dignity they have earned. From the earliest vision to final unveiling, Diane Carlson Evans channeled courage, compassion, and leadership, hallmarks of nursing at its finest. Her legacy is etched not only in bronze, but in the hearts of all who served. And every patient whose suffering was eased by a nurse's touch, and every young woman who now sees her service honored on our nation's most sacred grounds, as well as future generations who will be inspired to serve as an example. For her unwavering commitment to honoring nurses' contributions, her transformational impact on public awareness, and the healing legacy she created for generations of women, veterans, and their families, we wholeheartedly and proudly nominate Diane Carlson Evans for the Daisy Lifetime Achievement Award.
So Diane, I now have the privilege of bestowing on you the gifts that our Daisy honorees receive. Now, I have to tell you that when Cindy and I conspired on how to get all of this to you, which you may figured out is the reason I was asking for Mike's cell phone number, that we thought that if we sent everything to John, he would be right there with you and he could hand you everything. And then we found out that John lives 2 hours away from you. So all the things that John is going to present to you virtually will be in your hands as soon as he can get them to you, right, John?
That's true.
So we're going to begin with him reading to you your Daisy Award certificate. John, the stage is yours.
Well, first I'll show you what this looks like in this beautiful packaging. And inside is the actual award, which says the Daisy Lifetime Achievement Award 2025 in recognition of a lifetime of achievement to Diane Carlson Evans, founder of the Vietnam Women's Memorial Foundation. To devote your life's work to the service and care of others deserves a very special award. To do this as a nurse deserves a very special Daisy Award. Thank you for the compassion and skill with which you have treated all of your patients, their families, and your colleagues. Signed by many of the people on this call.
Secondly, John, you want to hold up? Diane is getting her very own Healer's Touch sculpture.
It is a very beautiful
Oh,
stone sculpture.
So
good.
these sculptures that we call a Healer's Touch are hand carved for us in Zimbabwe by artists of the Shona tribe. And each one is a little bit different. I'm sure that at the base there, there's a signature of one of our 22 artists that we employ in Zimbabwe. And we think it's just a beautiful reflection of the relationship that nurses have with their patients. But also in Diane's case, this is a symbol of the relationship Diane has with all the women who have served in Vietnam. The bond that you created through the creation of the Vietnam Women's Memorial, Diane, I think is beautifully symbolized in this sculpture, and we hope that you will cherish it.
Thank you. I will.
And there's
And
one more thing.
ironically, the signature on the bottom says Mike. So
Does it? That's great. And one more gift. When Patrick was in the hospital, we saw very quickly that nurses have a thing about pins. And I know that in the military, it is really a thing about pins and awards and honors and medals. So right after we created the Daisy Award, we wanted to have a pin that would represent this incredibly important honor that patients and families and colleagues bestow on their nurses. For the Daisy Lifetime Achievement Award, we approached an artist, a jewelry designer in Washington, D.C. named Anne Hand. And you may have seen her work. She creates pins a lot for the military and for public service. So I was very, very excited to meet her and to tell her what we were trying to do with this very special Lifetime Achievement Award pin. And she donated her design work to us. And today we are proud to be able to give you, Diane, as soon as John can get it to you, your Anne Hand Daisy Award Lifetime Achievement Award pin.
Thank you.
Hope you will wear it proudly. So, Diane, is there anything you might like to say to this incredible gathering?
Right now, I'm rather speechless seeing my son involved in this. How did you get him to do this? John Eric, I'm shocked. I'm so thrilled that you're part of this. Thank you. And for agreeing to be with us tonight. John Eric is a very busy person. Well, I'm very much overwhelmed, and you know, Ed, from the Army Nurse Corps, that means a lot because when I first went to the Army Nurse Corps for support for what I was doing, I was turned down. And maybe, Ed, you know a little of that history. That changed later, but I was crushed because I thought, here I am, this young captain, and I needed help from my fellow Army nurses, and I was getting it from the younger rank, but the colonels and the general in the Army Nurse Corps were a little suspicious. And when I look back, I can see why. They didn't know me. I could be this fly-by-night, whoever I was, like I was called this woman coming out of the cornfields by the commissioners at the Fine Arts Commission. A staffer had told me, he said, Diane, you know what they're saying about you behind the scenes. And I said, well, I can only imagine. He said, well, they're calling you that woman coming out of the cornfields. And I said, good, that makes me proud. I'm proud of those cornfields. I'm proud to be a farmer's daughter. So when I started out, I didn't have a lot of support. And when I went to military nurses, whom I had even worked with, They said, Diane, I don't want a memorial. I don't talk about this. And what good will a memorial do anyway? And nobody's going to give a damn. Good luck. So I was getting this, I'm just starting out and I'm so excited. Mike will tell you that I was going to do something to honor my mother, who was a nurse for 45 years. And she was my North Star. She was my inspiration. I followed her around at the hospital. I worked together. I worked with her, and she never got the recognition she deserved. And so now I'm committed, I'm passionate. And the Army Nurse Corps, of course, Ed, they came around. It just took them time. They didn't want to work with someone like me who might fail. Well, I didn't want to fail either. But one of the things about leadership that you learn as you're moving forward is you can't be afraid to go to the top, to make a phone call to Admiral Crowe at the Pentagon, which I did. And he actually picked up the phone when the executive officer told him, this nurse who says she was in the Army in Vietnam says she wants to put a memorial on the mall. And the Secretary of the Navy, James Webb, wrote a letter to the Commission of Fine Arts and said, no, they don't deserve a memorial on the mall. The Secretary of the Navy said, we don't support this. And the Vietnam Veterans the memorial is closed and there won't be any other additions. And we've even heard from the scout dogs who want to put a statue, and James Webb said this. So that really upset me. So when I called the Pentagon, Admiral Crowe was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the time. And when the executive officer put me through to him, I said, Admiral Crowe, did you know that your Secretary of the Navy wrote a letter to the Commission of Fine Arts, said he doesn't approve of honoring nurses and women who served in Vietnam? And Admiral Crowe said, no. Well, let me look into this. And he gets back to me. He calls me back a few days later and he said, Diane, I have a way I think I can help you with your project. My wife, Shirley, would like to serve on your board of directors. But the first people I called to find support I called Frances Shea Buckley, Admiral. I think she was the first admiral maybe of the reserves in the Navy, or what do you call it? Navy reserves?
Active. She was active
and
duty.
so
but
I looked up these people. There was no Googling back then. I had to dig and go to the library and find these people, but I did. And so I called her and I talked to her, and she was on a hospital ship in Vietnam. So we chatted and I said, could I put your name on the letterhead of my stationery, the honorary council? Because I need some names with some rank on my letter. She said, absolutely. So off went her name on the letterhead. Then I called Air Force. I called Jeannie Holm, General Holm, who was not a nurse. And I talked to her on the phone. She called me back. And I said, General Holm, this is my idea. You don't know me, but I'm very committed to this. And I talked to her about the mission and what, the four concepts of our mission was, first of all, honor the women by placing a figurative sculpture on the National Mall that looks like women. Number two, educate the world about who these women were and what they accomplished and what they did. Number three, sister search, find these women. Who are they? Where are they? And four, which we came up with later when we got smarter, we said to facilitate research on these women, because they weren't being included in the CDC study on Agent Orange. They weren't being included in PTSD studies. These women were completely left out of the picture of everything. Benefits at the VA, and even getting in Vietnam, like the operating room nurse who was giving the Bronze Star to the OR nurses didn't finish the paperwork. And so she left, and the new operating room supervisor came in, threw the paperwork away, and said, nurses don't deserve medals. Are we still together? Because I'm just seeing something here that says Diane's iPad. Do you still hear me?
We
Oh,
hear
yeah,
you.
yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
You're
Yep.
here. We love it.
So now I'm going off on my tangent, but I just want you to comprehend how I had to start this with all this pushback from fellow nurses. from my fellow Army Nurse Corps senior officers. And I thought, aren't the senior officers supposed to support the junior officers? Isn't that what it's about? I'm a junior officer supporting them. It was like, this is backwards. But I had to do what my mother did. And that just, she never quit 45 years of nursing in that hospital as a staff nurse. She loved bedside nursing and she never left the bedside. And I admired her so much for her commitment to nursing and how the patients loved her. And it often just went back to, then my mother was constantly supporting me and said, Diane, I'm retired now. In 1982, she said, when you need to be gone away from home, I'll come and take care of the kids. So I had my mother with 4 kids under the age of 10 when I founded the project. Could have been at a worse time, 4 kids under the age of 10, and now I'm going off all over the country. And my husband, Mike, loved my mother. So they were all happy. She kept the cookie jar full and the laundry done while I was gone. So I'm just giving you a quick snapshot of how this started. But then once I got the ball rolling and I had people like General Holm and Admiral Buckley and the Army Nurse Corps came a little later. So I started with a lieutenant colonel. I got Colonel Evangeline Jameson, who served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. She was in Vietnam as a chief nurse, and she got in there and wasn't just sitting behind her desk doing what generals have to do, of course, the paperwork. She was giving patient care when they had mass casualties. So now we have Lieutenant Colonel Jameson, who I put on our board of directors. And then after this, now one by one, people started coming on board, especially when they could see that I wasn't giving up. I was going to move forward with this and do everything it took. So, I went to the American Legion. That's 3 million members back then, and 1 or 2 million auxiliary members. And I got their support. And then all of the veteran service officers fell into, that same kind of support. And then when you get that kind of numbers talking to Congress, then you're on your way. And so, but we had our champions, and of course, General Colin Powell, former chairman of the Joint, he was 110% on board, and later General Shalish Kachvili. But yeah, it just took courage to, and I didn't even know I had courage. I didn't call it courage. I just thought, I'm not intimidated by rank. I'm not intimidated by titles. I will talk to anybody who will listen to me. And just picking up the phone and calling people who can help make things happen. And I was blessed with that. And then all the pushback and the naysayers and the mean-spirited, they were all men who I found very, well, they were just mean-spirited men who didn't want to see women recognized. And so I thought, well, I don't need them. I'm going to work around them. And they finally fell away when they could see that, people with more power and rank than they had were on board with us. And then they gave up trying to stop what we were doing, because we were unstoppable by now. We weren't going to stop. It was the first, and I had done my research. I'd been at the library. I wanted to find out how many memorials on our National Mall honor military women. Well, they had one to Joan of Arc, but wrong military, wrong country. There weren't any. And so that was part of when I wrote testimony and when I had to convince these people, well, there are no memorials honoring our military women on the National Mall. It's time. And because we didn't give up, and we built this huge network now of allies and fundraising. Now we've raised $5 million. We did it. It wasn't easy, but corporations came through like Boeing and Hibiclens, was the cleanser used in Vietnam in the operating room, and they gave us $500,000. All we had to do was ask. So that's the long and the short of it.
Diane, thank you so much for giving that. And now you also understand why Mike hung around for your your
And then this
meeting.
guy, if you've read my book, there's two heroes in my book, my mother and my husband. And if Mike, there were times, I'll confess, there were times I wanted to quit, and I would come home and I would say, I can't do this anymore. The kids need me. And I just can't do this anymore. And he'd say, well, you can't quit now. Look at all these women, you know, waiting for this. And I was wishing that he'd say, yes, you need to quit. The kids need you home more than you need to be on the road. So just quit. And then I would have, because it wouldn't have cost me my marriage. So I was kind of hoping he'd tell me to quit, because then I'd have permission to do it. But he never gave me permission. And neither did my mother, because my mother just, she came every time I needed her. She came. So the kids were safe. They loved grandma. So when you embark on a journey like mine, you never do this alone. You do not do this alone. And the important thing is to give credit to those who helped you get there. And so writing my book was a catharsis for me, because I had always wanted to thank the people who, it meant so much to me to give credit to the people. I didn't do this by myself. There would not be a statue there if it wasn't for hundreds and hundreds of volunteers and the donors. And then, of course, finding Glenna Goodacre and her brilliance in her design. So it got approved at the Commission of Fine Arts, and then testifying 2 years in Congress and dealing with, oh my God, the politics of DC. And I was that woman coming out of the cornfields. I knew I was so naive. But I have to say this, it's a good thing I was naive, because if I knew what I was getting into, I didn't have that much courage. No, I wasn't gonna put myself through that. So it was good that, I was naive, but I never backed down from the meanest people who were trying to stop what we were doing. They're the ones, I'll have to say this just real quickly. The madder they made me, and they made me mad, because the awful things they said about us women were derogatory, they were demeaning, disparaging, they were misogynistic. They were just wrong about their thinking. They were irrational, and I was talking to myself all the time about this in the middle of the night. And I thought, I'm going to show them. I'll just show them. They can't do this to us anymore. And we don't need them. So then, the madder they made me, the harder I worked. I had to work harder. But they gave me I was charged by all those bad guys, because really, if I can do what I did in Vietnam, I can do this, and I'll show them, because they're wrong.
So Diane, I think a little bit of your tenacity and hard work has rubbed off on your daughter, Carrie. I've been in touch with Carrie and Mike throughout the last few months. She had intended to be here tonight, but I think, she's got a huge workload going on in the public health service.
Yeah.
So she had to let me know that she didn't think she'd be able to make it. She was covering this evening. So,
Yeah.
but I said to her, your mom must have rubbed off on you to have that kind of dedication. So I wanted to call out some people. I think, Mike, you might know better who some of these folks are that you invited, but I think there's I know that we were having a conversation earlier. So if you know Diane from the earlier years and you want to do a shout out, please do. This is your opportunity. We're going to leave the room open here until at least 9 o'clock so people can visit with you and you can see who all is in attendance. So I think you had some board members that were on.
Diane, it's Lenny. Another surprise.
Hi, Lenny. You just pop up everywhere.
Don't I though?
And my sidekick Karen is popping up alongside me.
Hi, Karen. Oh, you two are awesome.
It's great to see you. You look well, and it's great to be in the audience and see you recognized in this manner.
Thank you, Karen. Two of the greatest Army Nurse Corps leaders I have ever known. I wish either one of you would have been my mentor, my chief nursing officer. You two just exemplify what the Army Nurse Corps needs to be and is and should be. This is really, I said it in my book, even when it was difficult times for us. I think us young nurses were a handful for the older nurses. I was 21. In Vietnam, had my 22nd birthday, and I wasn't a wild girl. I wasn't out doing things to embarrass the Army Nurse Corps because, I had my mother's, I had to live up to my mother's, how she behaved. And so but we partied and we had some fun too. But the average age, the nurses in Vietnam were the youngest ever to go into wartime. We were between 21 and 25. So yes, we were a handful, especially it's the 60s. This isn't the 50s or the 40s. It's the 60s, and it's a little wilder and it's a little, all of the above. And I think we just kind of terrified some of our senior officers, and they just wanted to keep us, tamp it down. And anyway, so, and I had some fabulous mentors in the Army Nurse Corps, and I said it several times in my book. I loved the Army Nurse Corps. I got out and I re-enlisted. I went back in because I couldn't handle civilian nursing. And when I got to Brooke Army Medical Center, which I requested when I re-enlisted, I had to fly to Chicago. I was at Madigan Army Hospital, and the nurse recruiter or whoever was helping me re-enlist said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, Brooke Army Medical Center. Okay. They sent me there. And as I'm walking up the steps of that old building, there was Colonel Gann, who was my chief nurse in Vietnam, who I adored. And she was a wonderful nurse. And maybe it was because she was married to an enlisted man. So a lot of the nurses who were dating enlisted men didn't get into trouble. She was so awesome. And she said, welcome back into the Army Nurse Corps, Captain Carlson. And I said, well, you forgot, I'm not a captain, I'm a lieutenant. She said, no, I just promoted you. I said, this is why I came back into the Army Nurse Corps. And then she asked me, where do you want to work? And I said, well, ICU, that's what I've been doing. And she said, good, that's where I've assigned you, go up to 13A. And then I met this guy who was a surgery resident. And so, it was all good, but the Army Nurse Corps saved my life. I was not happy when I came back from Vietnam. I was very unhappy. I was very lonely. I didn't like civilian nursing at all. I wasn't doing well in a civilian, and I went to a trauma hospital to work. I thought, well, I'll work at a trauma hospital. That'll be good. No, it wasn't good. So when I went back into the Army Nurse Corps, it kind of saved my life because I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't know I had it, but I was back in the military milieu. I was back with the military feeling, and we supported each other, and we were a team, and nobody was throwing anything at us, and we were just doing our jobs, and we were doing it well. And yeah, the Army Nurse Corps was good to me.
Diane, this is Marcia Gensler Stevens.
Marsha!
And I'm neither nurse nor Vietnam vet, but for the last 31 years, it has been my joy and pleasure to work alongside Diane. And what I often say is, I met Diane Carlson Evans when she came to the National Conference for College Women Student Leaders before the memorial was in the ground, and she inspired a whole cadre of young people to believe that stories matter. And I think what the Vietnam Women's Memorial has done is unleashed the stories. And simply by bravely telling your own story, you gave permission to so many other people to join us in sharing their own stories, including young men and women who serve today, who stand on the shoulders of so many of you because they feel like it's okay to talk about it. And so I am ever so grateful to my friend Diane, who is friend to many.
Thank you, Marcia.
Diane,
I was gonna say,
Kay Bauer,
Okay.
51 years ago, we
Yes.
got together, and I want you to know that we still, Mary Lou, Mary Beth, Val, Joan, we still get together. We've had many more, mostly all Army except one Navy nurse join our group. We have grown to 23 members now from Minnesota, and they're all Vietnam nurse vets. So they all served in country in Vietnam, and when we meet, we all talk about you. And of course, those of us who were with you back 51 years ago remember you so well. And I remember taking all the notes when we met weekly for a while. Love you so much, Diane. We miss you so much. And you're always in our prayers.
Thank you, Kay. And you were the first Navy nurse that I found and that I met because you came to the Landmark Center for the unveiling of our first statue. And I just glommed onto you because a Navy nurse, oh, this is fantastic. And then it was a little harder to find the Air Force nurses. They were kind of hidden and not coming out until then I did meet a flight nurse. And I think she was a friend of Penny Kettlewell, who was an Army, she was a nurse anesthetist. And so then I found my first Air Force flight nurse. And then it snowballs. You find one and then you ask them, well, can you be a volunteer? And one of those volunteers who helps at Sister Search, because they all wanted now, like, what can I do to help? Well, you can help with publicity, education, Sister Search, help find the women who served. You can help fundraise. We need money. You can write letters to the commissioners. So the thing about leadership is when somebody says to you, what can I do to help? You find them a job. And then you keep them informed, you communicate with them. I started writing newsletters. Remember when you started getting newsletters? And then
Yes, oh,
keep
yes.
our volunteers informed, because if you don't talk to your volunteers, you don't keep them. They disappear, they get disillusioned, or they feel like they're not seen or not noticed. But you rely on your volunteer. I was a volunteer for a whole 10 years, and people couldn't believe I wasn't being paid for what I was doing. And I said, they couldn't pay me enough money to do this, so I'm just not going to get paid at all. And my husband was so dear. He said, honey, just do it till you get it done. Don't worry. One income is enough for our family. So he just, again, gave me that blessing and our board members, we had so many wonderful board members, and they came and they went, and developing a board, that's an art in itself. And I had a huge learning curve. But with people like you, Kay, coming on in support, and then hundreds and thousands more like you, and not just all nurses. Now we expanded it to honor all women. So now we have women who served around the world coming and saying, this is for me too. Thank you. What can I do to help? It was just a miracle.
Love you, dear.
Yeah, and you too, Kay.
Hello,
Hi, Diane. Diane, this is Jeannie Mahaffey, your other Navy nurse.
Oh, Jean. Jean, what are you up to now? She's doing all these things to get me awards, like trying to get the new VA Women Veterans clinic at Minneapolis. She wants them to name it after me. So then I get all these letters like, Diane, we're nominating you to have your name. And I said, you don't have to do that. And they say, well, yes, we do.
Well, you've done so much for all nurses, not just for the Army, but for the Navy and I was on the Sanctuary, the hospital ship in Vietnam. And then from there, I went to Guam because I didn't get to complete my tour because the ship came back to the States. So I had the experience both there. And, it was just such an honor to, of course, to meet Kay. And then Kay took me to DC for one of the recognitions for the women's statue. And then our friendship has just continued on from there. And you got me involved with the TV station here for your award at one time last year. So I just cherish you so much and appreciate all that you have done, for all military nurses, for all nurses in general, and the support that you have shown to everybody.
Thank you, Jean.
And tomorrow morning at 7:30, I'm on the Daisy committee at the Minneapolis VA hospital, and so we'll be giving another award tomorrow morning at 7:30. And it's truly an honor to be on that committee. I've been on it since its inception years ago. And so every month we recognize another nurse, and it's truly an honor.
And Jean, are you going to be presenting this new honoree with one of your beautiful handmade rosettes?
I have some that I can provide to them also.
We have a place of honor in our Daisy Museum. I think of you every time I see them with so much gratitude. You are an artist.
I love to sew and I love to do little crafty things. So, that's when I put some of those together. And like I said earlier, it was such an honor for us to have you at the Minneapolis VA back for the Nurses Week. And you were our first stop on your 5 or 6 hospital stops that day where everybody was recognizing nurses for the award. So we really appreciate and thank you both for coming.
It was a gift to us, believe me.
So Diane, I wanted to let you know that this is being recorded, so we'll make sure you have the recording. And then there's many beautiful comments being made in the chat box, which you'll also get a record of as well. So I just wanted to reassure you. We did want to catch a picture before everyone left the room. And I think my buddy up there, Mary, is going to try to manage that for us.
If everyone could turn on their cameras, then we can go ahead and do a photo. I've got 2 screens to catch, so.
Mary, where do we turn the camera on? Is it? I'm illiterate with this. Is it at the bottom where it says start video, or no? It's
start video.
Yeah.
Oh, that hit that. Okay.
There you go.
I better lower my head.
There you are, Jeannie. We see you.
Okay.
And hi, Diane. Anne's here.
Anne,
And
another Navy nurse.
Yes, and my dad was the one who was Army Air Corps, who convinced me, don't go Army, go Navy. And so I did, how that goes. And so I wound up working in Japan after St. Albans, taking care of those guys that you guys sent back. So yeah, it's been a joy and an honor as always to work with you, Diane. So
thank you.
Becky and I are thrilled to see this. Keep up the good work.
I saw a message from Sue Miller, one of our wonderful volunteers, she was again one of these people, Diane. She contacted me, what can I do to help? And we were right in the planning of our first anniversary, 5 years, or I don't know if Sue would remember, was it 10 years or 15? But she really wanted to do something to help. Well, when somebody asks, find them a job, because they mean it. So I said, well, I think, wouldn't it be nice if there were roses, just lots and lots of roses handed out to people standing around the Vietnam Women's Memorial during our anniversary, and just present them with a rose, and then they can place it at the statue, and they feel connected. They're putting something significant, like a beautiful flower. And so I don't know, Sue will remember, did we start with 500 roses? We decided that was too many and too expensive. So then we went to we kept lowering the number of roses, but we still do it every year. And that Sue, every anniversary, she takes it on as that her job. And then she has her colleagues and other Navy nurses and others help her do that. So
Diane, it's an honor to do that for you every
hi,
time.
Sue, you're there.
Yeah, oh, I'm so honored to be able to do that rose ceremony.
I know you are.
We love you.
Oh, thank you. I still remember well, I remember the Air Force had all their Air Force women behind the banner in the parade in 1993. We had a big parade, a huge parade. Thousands of people were lining this, saying thank you to us. And then there was the Navy Nurse Corps, and then they signed the banner. And so then they gave me the banner, and now it's in the attic somewhere. I should dig it out and see what signatures are on there, because they signed their name on it and they said things like, thank you, Diane. And they rolled it up, and then in the mail, I got this parade banner with all the signatures on it. I do need to find that.
And Diane, I want to tell you, I've already told everybody they're all invited every Memorial Day and Veterans Day to come tell their stories. So the word,
You're a great
word out.
advocate for that.
Yeah, and the entire Pennsylvania State Nurses Association, we had your book as the book club, and I gave them the same lines, and I expect to see you guys down there. You never know, a few may show up yet.
Hi, Diane. This is Kate
Hi,
from
Kate.
Vietnam Vets of America. How are you doing?
Of course. Hi,
I'm
Kate.
I'm so happy you get another award. But you are the ultimate nurse. And I listen every time I hear more of the legacy of Vietnam Memorial, the Women's Vietnam Memorial. It really reminds me, I was in California working with Kathleen Cordova way back when,
She was
trying to
one
get
of our first volunteers.
That's right, trying to get money from the West Coast. We seemed so far away from what was happening, but we did what we could. And I think one of the biggest things that I remember you did for all of us, because I was also one of those 21-year-old nurses that turned 22 in Vietnam, you gave us a voice after we came home, when you finally put that in motion. And you always were supporting us to speak out, because so many of us, like you're saying, oh, people didn't want a memorial. No, we wanted a memorial. We wanted to be heard, but we were afraid, just like you were talking about. We were afraid to tell our stories because we had been told not to tell our stories, that we weren't worthwhile. It was an amazing time in that period of the early 70s and 80s when this was all coming about, before we really got the dedication on in the 93. We had 20 years of being bashed, I think. And so you were able to give us our spirits back, and we were able to talk and write. We will never forget that.
Thank you, Kate. I have a quick story then, perfect example. So I call my dearest friend in the world, my hooch mate from Vietnam, and we sort of stayed in touch, but not really. But then I had this big idea about this statue, and I had her phone number. So I called her, and she and my other wonderful Ann Cunningham, they both said, oh, Diane, I don't talk about it. No. I said, well, there's going to be a radio interview, and I got a call from New York, and she lived in New York. And this woman she said, oh my gosh, I've got 4 men on my radio interview talking about Vietnam. And then I realized, well, there were women in Vietnam. So she got my phone number. Of course, now I'm a little more visible. And she said, can you help me find a woman? And I said, yes, I have just the woman for you. So I called Edie Meeks McCoy. And she said, Diane, I don't talk about Vietnam. I can't do that. And she said, who would listen to me? And I said, Edie, I can't twist your arm too hard, but if we don't share our stories, how are people going to know who we really are and what we actually did in Vietnam? If we don't share our stories. And I said, the listeners are going to love you, because she's just a lovable person. And I said, you can call me back. And she said, oh, okay, Diane, I have to do it because you've asked me to. And you know what happened? I got to listen to it later. It was taped. These 4 guys were typical guys talking about their Vietnam experience. And then there was Edie. Drop dead, just like, listen, every word she said. She was magnificent and she was just herself. And you could tell she was just, it was hard for her to talk about this. But what she made a mistake, because she said to the guys, she said, I know I was just a nurse in Vietnam, but
Yep.
so when I got to listen to this, I said, Edie, you were magnanimous. I said, nobody was listening to the guys after you started talking. And I said, but don't you ever say you were just a nurse ever again. We're not just nurses. But we've done that to ourselves.
Yes.
We were
Yes.
just nurses while the guys were being wounded and suffering and dying, and it was all about them. It was never about us. In
Right.
Vietnam, it was never, we didn't come first. They did. They were
That's
always first.
that's
They
right.
came first. If they needed us, we were there for them.
That's right.
And she laughed and she said, okay, Diane. And then now we laugh because I said, Edie, once you started talking, we couldn't shut you up. She just became the most eloquent speaker for herself and for all of us.
Yes. You created an army, another kind of army. That all of, like you said, like the older nurse corps didn't really know how to handle us in the beginning, but they gave us free rein in the end to
They
do
did.
what we needed to do. Yeah,
That's
they
right.
did. That's right.
And
That's right.
especially on the units, they unleashed us. So Marcia has used that word so eloquently, unleashing the stories, which really has happened.
Yep.
The Army Nurse Corps leadership, the colonels, the senior officers, they unleashed us into jobs that were for 30-year-old nurses, and we were 21. But they
That's
let
right.
us go, and they let us do our thing, and we learned fast, and we did a great job. And it didn't take long to learn fast because mass casualties. When you're starting 20 IVs in one day, you learn how to become very proficient
That's right.
in your
That's right.
skills, which came very quickly to us. And then they just let us go do our work.
Yep.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is Karen Bourne. I'm a Vietnam nurse. I was on the hospital ship Sanctuary, and I was 23. We were too young to know we shouldn't have been able to do these things. They just said, take care of the casualties, meet this aircraft, run these wards, do all this stuff. Okay, fine. No problem. That same old, I don't see any limitations to what I can do. Thank God. Because I had a friend who is Vietnam era, and she says, oh, they could have never made you do that kind of stuff. You couldn't do it now on a hospital ship. There's all these laws about so many patients per nurse and blah, blah, blah. And you could stand up and say, I refuse to do that. And I'm like, really? I'm just going to let these guys go because there's more patients than I think I should be able to care for? No, you just do it, But Diane, I was at the 93 dedication with my mother marching in the street behind the Navy Nurse Corps banner. And I just loved all those guys that were on the side of the street rooting us on. And that evening, after all the ceremonies were done, or maybe it was the next evening, I went back and it was quiet. And I was a little tearful, and my mother's sitting back going, I don't understand why you're so moved by this. And you just have this flood of memories. Some young man, no, I shouldn't say young. Well, we were all young then, sorry. Some Navy medic corpsman walked into the area and saw me a little tearful. And he came over and he said, could I give you a hug for all you did? It was fabulous. That's what I needed right then. And there was a hug. Now, when you talk about the stories, no, I haven't told the stories all that much. My reasoning being, it takes too long to set up the situation before you get to the story, and for people who had no understanding of it. But last July, I was asked to present my experience on the sanctuary to the Vietnam veterans at Diablo Valley here in California. And so, you know, you put together the slideshow and you start thinking about all the stories you want to tell. And all I could think about was it was a work hard, fun hard environment. I had a lot of fun. I met wonderful people. I stayed friends with some of those folks for 50 years. You know, one of the pilots, the Army pilots, the helicopter pilots that I had known, just died in the last few years from his Agent Orange induced cancer. But we stayed friends and visited for years, you know, so it's like, yes, it was a very remarkable time in my life, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It made me a lot of who I am today. So I got out after 22 years, and then I did civilian nursing for 18. And all I kept hearing as you're trying to get things done is, we're not in your military. You have to ask politely, and we have the right to say no. And I'm going, okay, fine. You don't want to be a good nurse. You don't want to take care of your patients. These things need to get done. Now get off your butt and get going. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not putting up with this. But, you know, I survived both. Now I'm glad I'm very retired. But everything you did for us and the monument means the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane, I'm going to sign off. I've got guests for tonight for dinner, and I can hear Mark pounding the chicken in the other room, so I better get going. But I want to say,
much, Bonnie.
just a beautiful, beautiful tribute to you. So much of what you deserve and more. So congratulations. Welcome to our Daisy community as a Daisy honoree. I couldn't be more proud, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for making this so special. You've been a fantastic partners. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So I just want to double check and make sure we got the picture we needed, Mary. Yep, got the picture. Okay. So now that you all have reconnected, I hope you'll continue to connect outside of this venue as well. Diane, it has been such a pleasure working on this project. And I don't know if you realize what you've started, but we now have a regular collaborative with our ANCA, SAFN, and NNCA group. And we will probably invite you back to be part of it. And this time there won't be a surprise waiting necessarily, except us.
I'd love to be a part of it. And the one final word I would have to say is what the Vietnam Women's Memorial has done above and beyond everything we have been clear on. It has connected us. We're a community now. We're connected, and we find more and more connections. And we don't have to be on site at the Vietnam Women's Memorial to feel that connection, because now we're talking to each other and we're caring, we're holding each other's hands as we go through the difficulties of aging. And those of us who have struggles right now, I say I have an army of veterans out there all holding my hand, and it feels pretty darn good. Besides my personal physician, who I promoted to be my nurse. One day I said, honey, because he was playing doctor, he can't help it because he is one. And I said, honey, I have so many doctors telling me what to do. I'm promoting you to be my nurse. And he's made a very good one.
Love it. And Mike, it's been a pleasure working with you. You're everything. I read the book. I keep wanting to hold the book up. If you haven't read this book, please read it. It will give you so much perspective. It's just a wonderful thing.
Definitely will. If I may jump in, I know the only person that knew me was Bonnie, and she jumped off, but I just wanted to say how humbled I am to be in the presence of all of you. I consider you all heroes as a nurse of 36 years and still working, and will be working probably for the next 15. I will just say I had the pleasure of creating with, of course, Daisy, I created the concept of the Lifetime Achievement Award. There has never been a recipient that was more worthy. It was created when one afternoon I was in an auditorium behind an OR nurse who had been working for over 40 years. So Diane, it could have been like your mom. And I thought, Hollywood gets the Walk of Fame, they get the red carpet, and what do nurses get? Like there has been a lot of sacrifice. There's the schooling, there's the career, the night shifts, you give up the weekends, the holidays, the birthdays, all the, the social, and then to hear you all speak of military nursing, which is, a concept that I've only just begun to understand as my sons are in the Army. But this is exactly why this award was created, for those people who have given endlessly countless contributions to the enrichment and betterment and care and love, if you will, of all others. There are no words. There had to be an award. So thank you for allowing me to be on the call and for taking a few minutes of your time to speak with each of you. And I bid you good night from the state of Georgia, because I have to get up at 3 a.m. and be at work at 5 because I'm still working and loving it. Don't get me wrong.
Well, thank you for
So
what you've done. Thank you for
Thank
what
you,
you've done
Janet.
for us and for your dedication and your passion.
Diane, I'd just like to close too with saying, not only, of course, thank you, but we have a replica of the statue, and it sits now in the front entrance of the Minneapolis hospital as people enter the main entrance, not through the outpatient entrance because Bob Hope is there, but we have in the main entrance. And so as people come through one door and then as they're leaving from the other, they see the whole statue, front and back. And it's amazing the number of people and the guys that leave little cards on that statue.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
Very
Thank you
special.
all. Oh, this is. I'm so
So,
grateful.
Thank you for
to all of
making
you.
this happen, all of you folks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the Air Force, the Navy, the Army,
Coast Guard.
and the Coast Guard. And I want to say one final thing about our male nurses, our brother nurses who are men, because I did get comments when I began this about male nurses would write to me and said, well, we were there too. And I said, of course you were, I knew you. I think this, Ed, you could probably find the statistics, but I did read, and I put it in my book, that about 20% more or less of our nurses in Vietnam were men, Navy, Air Force, Army. But I said, the statue of the 3 servicemen is your memorial. That is the monument that honors and remembers the men, your gender. We have no intention of leaving out our brother male nurses. This is the Vietnam Women's Memorial. Women's includes nurses and all women in all occupational specialties and serving around the world. So please forgive us, but we feel that the men got their statue and that inspired me, like they forgot someone, and that was the women. And then they're fine. They're fine with that. So Ed, I hope you're fine with that. And I've had nothing but support from my brother male nurses in the Army Nurse Corps. We were a great team.
Thank you, Diane.
well, again, thank you all for joining us this evening, and we will definitely get a copy of this, Diane, to you, make it available.
you.
Mary, do you want to